how powerful was Germany in World War II? Part 1. The Rise of a War Machine. Imagine a nation so powerful that, in less than 2 years, it conquered most of Europe. A military so advanced that its enemies believed it was unstoppable. A war machine capable of launching lightning-fast invasions that changed military history forever. At its peak, Nazi Germany controlled millions of soldiers, thousands of tanks, deadly submarines, and some of the most advanced weapons the world had ever seen. But just 1 decade earlier, Germany wasn't powerful at all. It was bankrupt, humiliated, and forbidden from building a modern army. So how did a broken nation become the most feared military power on Earth? And just how powerful was Germany during World War II? This is the story of one of history's greatest military transformations. The story begins not in 1939, but in the ruins of the First World War. Germany's defeat in 1918 left the country politically divided, economically shattered, and socially unstable. The Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh conditions on Germany. It demanded massive reparations, stripped away territory, limited industrial capabilities, and reduced the German army to only 100,000 men. Germany was forbidden from building tanks, forbidden from having an air force. Its navy was drastically reduced. To many Germans, the treaty wasn't simply punishment, it was national humiliation. The economy spiraled into crisis. Hyperinflation became so severe that ordinary citizens needed wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy bread. Families lost their life savings overnight. Businesses collapsed. Unemployment soared, confidence in the government disappeared. Across the country, many people believed Germany would never recover. But beneath the surface, military thinkers refused to accept permanent defeat. Even while officially restricted, German officers secretly studied new forms of warfare. Instead of relying on the slow trench battles that defined World War I, they imagined something completely different. Fast, aggressive, coordinated. A new style of war built around speed rather than numbers. The ideas were only theories for now. Everything changed in 1933. That year, Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. His government immediately launched one of history's fastest military rebuilds. Factories reopened. Massive public construction projects reduced unemployment. Steel production increased. Coal mines expanded. Weapons factories quietly returned to life. Officially, Germany still claimed to respect international agreements. In reality, it was preparing for war. By 1935, Hitler openly rejected the military restrictions imposed after World War I. Germany reintroduced mandatory military service. The army expanded rapidly. Aircraft factories began producing modern fighters and bombers. Tank development accelerated, military spending exploded. Other European nations protested. Few took meaningful action. Many believed Germany simply wanted to restore national pride. They underestimated how quickly Germany was transforming. One of Germany's greatest advantages wasn't just technology, it was organization. Military planners understood that tanks alone couldn't win battles. Aircraft alone couldn't win wars. Success required every branch of the military working together. Radio communication became standard equipment. Commanders could adjust plans instantly. Tank crews coordinated directly. With aircraft overhead, motorized infantry followed armored divisions at incredible speed. Artillery supported attacks almost immediately. For the first time in modern warfare, an entire military could move as one coordinated machine. This doctrine became known as Blitzkrieg, lightning war. Instead of wearing down enemy defenses, through months of trench fighting, German forces aimed to break through quickly, surround defenders, and destroy them before they could reorganize. Speed became Germany's deadliest weapon. The world had never witnessed warfare like it. Germany also invested heavily in military technology. Companies designed increasingly powerful tanks. Aircraft manufacturers developed fast fighters capable of dominating the skies. Engineers improved artillery. New communications equipment made German units more flexible than many opponents. Training standards were exceptionally demanding. Officers encouraged initiative. Junior commanders often made battlefield decisions without waiting for higher approval. This flexibility allowed German forces to react faster than many rival armies tied to rigid command structures. By the late 1930s, Germany possessed one of the best trained armies in the world, but strength on paper means little until tested in combat. The first major demonstration came in September 1939. Germany invaded Poland. Within days, armored divisions smashed through defensive lines. Dive bombers attacked railways, bridges, and communication centers. Infantry advanced rapidly behind tanks. Polish forces fought with determination, but they struggled against an enemy moving faster than they could respond. In only weeks, Poland collapsed. Around the world, military observers watched in shock. Britain and France declared war on Germany. World War II had begun, yet many expected a long stalemate similar to World War I. Germany had different plans. Instead of attacking France head-on through heavily defended positions, German planners devised a bold strategy. They would advance through the Ardennes Forest, a region many Allied commanders believed impossible for a large armored force. It was an enormous gamble. Thousands of vehicles moved through narrow forest roads. Traffic jams stretched for miles. If Allied aircraft had discovered and attacked the columns, the invasion might have failed before reaching the battlefield. Instead, German forces emerged where few expected them. Then they attacked with overwhelming speed. French defenses collapsed. British forces retreated toward the coast. Entire Allied armies became trapped. The evacuation from Dunkirk saved hundreds of thousands of British troops, but France itself could not recover. In June 1940, Paris fell. This flexibility allowed German forces to react faster than many rival armies tied to rigid command structures. By the late 1930s, Germany possessed one of the best trained armies in the world, but strength on paper means little until tested in combat. The first major demonstration came in September 1939. Germany invaded Poland. Within days, armored divisions smashed through defensive lines. Dive bombers attacked railways, bridges, and communication centers. Infantry advanced rapidly behind tanks. Polish forces fought with determination, but they struggled against an enemy moving faster than they could respond. In only weeks, Poland collapsed. Around the world, military observers watched in shock. Britain and France declared war on Germany. World War II had begun, yet many expected a long stalemate similar to World War I. Germany had different plans. Instead of attacking France head-on through heavily defended positions, German planners devised a bold strategy. They would advance through the Ardennes Forest, a region many Allied commanders believed impossible for a large armored force. It was an enormous gamble. Thousands of vehicles moved through narrow forest roads. Traffic jams stretched for miles. If Allied aircraft had discovered and attacked the columns, the invasion might have failed before reaching the battlefield. Instead, German forces emerged where few expected them. Then they attacked with overwhelming speed. French defenses collapsed. British forces retreated toward the coast. Entire Allied armies became trapped. The evacuation from Dunkirk saved hundreds of thousands of British troops, but France itself could not recover. In June 1940, Paris fell. One of Europe's strongest military powers had been defeated in only 6 weeks. The victory stunned the world. Germany now dominated continental Europe. Countries that once considered Germany weak suddenly faced the continent's most powerful military machine. Hitler's popularity reached extraordinary heights inside Germany. Many believed victory after victory proved German military superiority. Captured factories increased industrial production. Conquered territories provided additional resources. Millions of workers across occupied Europe were forced into supporting Germany's growing war economy. The Wehrmacht expanded further. New tanks entered service. The Luftwaffe continued producing modern aircraft. The Kriegsmarine intensified submarine construction. German U-boats prepared for a campaign that would soon threaten Britain's survival. Economically, Germany still faced significant limitations. Unlike the United States or the Soviet Union, Germany lacked abundant oil reserves. It depended heavily on imported fuel and synthetic production. Rubber was scarce. Certain raw materials remained limited. German planners understood these weaknesses. They believed future conquests would provide the resources needed to sustain long-term war. This assumption would become one of Germany's greatest strategic risks. Still, in 1940, few could see those future problems. Instead, newspapers across the world described Germany as nearly unstoppable. Its soldiers appeared invincible. Its generals seemed brilliant. Its weapons inspired fear. The image of German military perfection spread rapidly. Yet, behind every spectacular victory were hidden vulnerabilities. Factories struggled to meet growing demand. Supply lines became longer with every conquest. Different weapons required different spare parts. Fuel consumption increased dramatically. The faster Germany advanced, the more difficult logistics became. Military success often hid these growing pressures. But for the moment, Germany remained at the height of its confidence. The greatest challenge still lay ahead. Across the English Channel stood Britain. Unlike France, Britain refused to surrender. Before Germany could invade, it first needed control of the skies. The Luftwaffe launched massive bombing campaigns against British airfields, factories, and cities. The Battle of Britain became the first major campaign fought almost entirely in the air. German bombers crossed the Channel daily. Fighter aircraft clashed in enormous aerial battles. Radar stations gave Britain valuable warning before attacks. Royal Air Force pilots defended their homeland with remarkable determination. For the first time since the war began, Germany failed to achieve its objective. Britain survived. Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain, was postponed indefinitely. Germany had suffered its first major strategic setback. It was a warning that even the most powerful military had limits. Yet despite this disappointment, Germany still controlled much of Europe. Its armies appeared stronger than ever. Millions of soldiers stood ready. Thousands of tanks waited. Aircraft production continued. Factories worked around the clock. Hitler now believed only one nation remained capable of challenging German dominance. To the east, the Soviet Union. What followed would become the largest military invasion in human history. An operation involving more than 3 million German soldiers, thousands of tanks, thousands of aircraft, and a gamble so enormous that it would ultimately determine the fate of Nazi Germany. But in the summer of 1941, almost no one believed Germany could lose. By the summer of 1941, Adolf Hitler believed Germany had achieved what no European power had in centuries. France had fallen. Poland had been crushed. Norway, Denmark, Belgium, the Netherlands, Yugoslavia, and Greece were under German control or occupation. From the Atlantic coast of France to the borders of the Soviet Union, the Nazi war machine dominated Europe. Millions of people lived under German rule. Factories across occupied Europe supplied weapons, ammunition, and military equipment. Railroads carried troops around the clock. German officers studied maps for what they believed would be the final campaign needed to secure total victory. The next target was unlike anything Germany had faced before. The Soviet Union, it was the largest country on Earth. Its territory stretched across 11 time zones. Its population exceeded 190 million people. Its army possessed thousands of tanks and millions of soldiers. Yet Hitler dismissed the Soviet military as weak. He believed one massive campaign would destroy it within a few months. The operation received the codename Operation Barbarossa. On June 22, 1941, before sunrise, the largest invasion in human history began. More than 3 million German soldiers crossed the border. Nearly 3,500 tanks rolled eastward. Over 7,000 artillery pieces opened fire. Thousands of aircraft from the Luftwaffe filled the skies. Alongside Germany were hundreds of thousands of troops from Romania, Finland, Hungary, Slovakia, and Italy. The front stretched for almost 1,800 miles. Never before had the world witnessed a military operation on such an enormous scale. The invasion struck with breathtaking speed. German bombers destroyed hundreds of Soviet aircraft while many were still parked on airfields. Entire Soviet divisions were surrounded before they understood what was happening. Massive pockets formed around Minsk and Smolensk. Hundreds of thousands of Red Army soldiers were captured. German commanders watched in disbelief. Victory appeared easier than expected. To military observers around the world, Germany looked invincible. What made Germany so effective wasn't simply superior weapons. It was the way every branch of the military worked together. Panzer divisions spearheaded the attack. Behind them came motorized infantry. Engineers built bridges under enemy fire. Artillery advanced rapidly. The Luftwaffe attacked roads, railways, fuel depots, and communications before Soviet commanders could organize a defense. Every hour counted. Every mile gained increased pressure on the enemy. German officers emphasized speed over hesitation. If an opportunity appeared, they exploited it immediately. This aggressive philosophy repeatedly caught opponents off guard. By late summer, entire Soviet armies had disappeared from the battlefield. Millions of prisoners were taken during the first months of the invasion. Some historians describe these encirclements as among the greatest operational victories ever achieved. But these victories came with hidden costs. Every mile east stretched German supply lines farther. Fuel trucks struggled to keep pace. Replacement parts became harder to deliver. Roads deteriorated into dust during summer and mud after rain. German planners had expected the campaign to end before winter. Few preparations were made for a prolonged war. Even so, in 1941, Germany possessed one of the most experienced armies on Earth. Its officers had already fought successful campaigns across Europe. Veteran tank crews understood mobile warfare better than almost anyone. Infantry units had years of combat experience. Discipline remained high. Morale was strong. Many soldiers genuinely believed victory was inevitable. German engineering also played an important role. While early German tanks were not always the most heavily armored, they were supported by excellent communications. Nearly every panzer carried a radio. This allowed commanders to redirect entire formations during battle. Many opposing forces still relied on slower methods of communication. That difference often proved decisive. Speed of decision became as important as firepower. The Luftwaffe represented another pillar of German strength. Its fighter aircraft protected advancing ground forces. Dive bombers, especially the famous Ju-87 Stuka, attacked bridges, artillery positions, and armored columns with terrifying precision. The distinctive sirens mounted on some Stukas became symbols of psychological warfare. For civilians and soldiers alike, the sound often arrived seconds before explosions. Fear itself became a weapon. German pilots had accumulated years of combat experience during earlier campaigns. Many were considered among the best-trained aviators in the world. Combined with effective ground coordination, air superiority allowed German armies to move with remarkable confidence. Germany's military success also depended on an industrial system working around the clock. Steel mills produced armor plate, factories manufactured rifles, machine guns, trucks, artillery, and aircraft. Rail networks delivered supplies to the front. Scientists developed improved optics, communications equipment, and engineering solutions. Despite limited natural resources, Germany managed to sustain one of the largest military production efforts of the war. But unlike the United States, Germany's economy had not yet fully transitioned to total war. Many factories still produced civilian goods. Competition between government agencies created inefficiencies. Different military branches often competed for the same resources. These problems remained largely hidden while victories continued. By September 1941, German armies had advanced hundreds of miles into Soviet territory. Entire regions had fallen. The city of Kiev became the site of one of history's largest military encirclements. Hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops were trapped. The victory reinforced the belief that Germany's strategy was unstoppable. Foreign military observers watched with astonishment. Could any nation resist such overwhelming power? For a brief moment, it seemed the answer was no. Yet beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to appear. German commanders increasingly reported shortages of fuel. Vehicle maintenance became more difficult. Replacement soldiers arrived more slowly than casualties accumulated. The Soviet Union, despite catastrophic losses, refused to collapse. New divisions continued appearing. Factories were dismantled and transported east beyond German reach. Entire industries restarted thousands of miles away. The war Germany expected to finish in months was slowly becoming a war of endurance. And endurance would favor nations with greater industrial capacity and larger reserves of manpower. Germany remained extraordinarily powerful. But for the first time, the limits of that power were beginning to emerge. And into 1942, Nazi Germany had reached the height of its military power. No nation in Europe possessed a larger, more experienced army. From the Arctic Circle to the deserts of North Africa, German forces fought on multiple fronts simultaneously. At its peak, the Wehrmacht fielded millions of soldiers. Thousands of tanks rolled across battlefields. The Luftwaffe flew tens of thousands of combat missions. German submarines hunted Allied shipping across the Atlantic. To many observers, Germany appeared unstoppable. Yet behind this image of overwhelming strength was a war machine that demanded enormous quantities of fuel, ammunition, food, and replacement equipment every single day. Maintaining such a force required one of the most complex military logistics systems in history. One of Germany's greatest advantages was the quality of its officer corps. Many commanders had spent decades studying military history. Officers like Heinz Guderian revolutionized armored warfare by emphasizing speed, communication, and concentrated force, instead of spreading tanks evenly across the battlefield. German doctrine grouped them into powerful armored divisions capable of punching through enemy defenses. Once a breakthrough occurred, motorized infantry widened the gap while mechanized units raced deep into enemy territory. The goal was simple: destroy the enemy's ability to organize before a major battle could even begin. This method transformed modern warfare. Military academies around the world still study these campaigns today. The German soldier was also extensively trained. Recruits endured physically demanding exercises. Weapons training was rigorous. Small unit tactics emphasized initiative. Junior officers and non-commissioned officers were expected to make decisions independently if communications failed. This flexibility often gave German units an advantage during fast-moving battles. While many armies waited for orders, German commanders frequently acted on opportunities immediately. That culture of initiative became one of Germany's greatest military strengths. Germany's armored forces inspired fear across Europe. Although early Panzer III and Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks formed the backbone of German armored divisions, battlefield experience led engineers to develop even more formidable machines. In 1942 and 1943, the Tiger I entered combat. Weighing over 50 tons, it carried the legendary 88mm gun. Its thick armor could withstand many Allied anti-tank weapons at long range. Its cannon could destroy enemy tanks from distances where opponents often could not effectively return fire. Allied soldiers quickly learned to respect and fear the Tiger. Stories spread rapidly, some exaggerated its capabilities, but its battlefield reputation became legendary. Soon afterward came the Panther tank. Designed after studying the Soviet T-34, the Panther combined sloped armor, high speed, and an exceptionally powerful 75mm gun. Many historians consider it one of the finest medium tanks of the Second World War. Yet both the Tiger and Panther revealed an important weakness in Germany's strategy. They were technologically impressive, but they were expensive. Complicated, and difficult to produce. Every advanced tank required enormous quantities of steel, precision engineering, skilled labor, and maintenance. While Germany built some of the most sophisticated tanks of the war, the Soviet Union and the United States focused on producing simpler vehicles in far greater numbers. Quantity would eventually become just as important as quality. German artillery remained another major source of battlefield power. Heavy guns supported infantry assaults. Self-propelled artillery kept pace with advancing armored divisions. Mortars provided rapid-fire support for frontline troops. German engineers also developed devastating anti-tank weapons that challenged even the strongest Allied armor. Combined with experienced crews, these weapons inflicted heavy losses throughout the war. Control of the skies remained essential. The Luftwaffe had already demonstrated its effectiveness during campaigns in Poland, France, and the early stages of Operation Barbarossa. Its fighter pilots were among the most experienced in the world. Aircraft such as the Messerschmitt Bf-109 proved fast, agile, and deadly. The versatile Focke-Wulf Fa-1990 soon joined the fight, becoming one of Germany's finest fighter aircraft. German pilots accumulated extraordinary combat experience. Some became the highest-scoring fighter aces in aviation history. But experience came at a cost. Replacing veteran pilots became increasingly difficult as the war continued. Training new aviators required time, fuel, aircraft, and instructors. As casualties mounted, maintaining the Luftwaffe's elite quality became harder every year. Far from the battlefields of Eastern Europe, another war unfolded beneath the Atlantic Ocean. The German Navy, the Kriegsmarine, understood it could never match Britain's Royal Navy ship for ship. Instead, Germany relied on submarines. The U-boat fleet, these underwater hunters, became one of Germany's most effective strategic weapons. Their mission was straightforward: cut Britain's supply lines. Every convoy crossing the Atlantic carried food, fuel, weapons, and raw materials. Without those shipments, Britain could not continue fighting. Wolf packs of U-boats coordinated attacks against Allied convoys, often striking at night. Merchant ships disappeared beneath the waves. Convoys suffered devastating losses. For a time, it appeared Germany might actually starve Britain into submission. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill later admitted that the U-boat threat worried him more than almost any other aspect of the war. The Battle of the Atlantic became the longest continuous military campaign of World War II. But technology once again changed the balance. Improved radar, sonar, long-range patrol aircraft, escort carriers, and better code-breaking gradually reduced Germany's submarine advantage. The hunters increasingly became the hunted. Germany also pushed the boundaries of science and engineering. Its research programs produced weapons years ahead of their time. The V-1 flying bomb introduced one of the world's first cruise missiles. The V-2 rocket became the first long-range guided ballistic missile ever used in combat. Traveling faster than the speed of sound, it struck without warning. There was no defense once launched. Germany also introduced the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet-powered fighter aircraft. It was dramatically faster than piston-engine fighters flown by the Allies. Had it entered service in large numbers earlier, it might have posed an even greater challenge. But by the time these advanced weapons appeared, Germany's industrial situation had deteriorated. Fuel shortages limited pilot training. Factories faced constant bombing. Production never reached the levels Germany desperately needed. Technological brilliance could not compensate for overwhelming industrial disadvantages. By 1942, Germany controlled or occupied territory stretching across much of Europe. Its economy exploited resources from conquered nations. Millions of forced laborers worked in German industries under brutal conditions. Railroads transported coal, steel, machinery, and military supplies across occupied Europe. Yet this enormous empire also created enormous responsibilities. Every occupied city required troops. Every railway demanded protection. Every convoy consumed fuel. The larger Germany became, the harder it became to sustain. Hitler believed the solution lay in one decisive victory. He turned his attention towards southern Russia. Its oil fields promised the fuel Germany desperately needed. Its industrial centers offered additional resources. The city standing in the way was Stalingrad. Few realized it then, but the battle for that city would become the turning point of the entire European war. The nation that had conquered almost every opponent before it was about to face its greatest test. And for the first time, Germany would discover that even the most powerful war machine in history could be pushed beyond its limits. By the end of 1942, Nazi Germany controlled more territory than any German state in history. From the Atlantic coast of France to deep inside the Soviet Union, from the icy waters of Norway to the scorching deserts of North Africa, the Third Reich stretched across an empire built by military conquest. At first glance, Germany looked unbeatable. Its soldiers were among the best trained in the world. Its generals had rewritten the rules of modern warfare. Its tanks, aircraft, submarines, and weapons inspired fear across every battlefield. But history has shown that military power is not measured only by victories. It is measured by the ability to sustain them. And Germany's greatest enemy was no longer a single nation. It was time itself. As German armies pushed deeper into the Soviet Union, their supply lines grew longer every week. A single tank division required enormous amounts of fuel. Thousands of trucks needed constant maintenance. Weapons demanded ammunition. Weapons demanded ammunition? Soldiers required food, winter clothing, and medical supplies. The farther German forces advanced, the more difficult every delivery became. Then came the Russian winter. Temperatures plunged far below zero. Engines froze. Weapons malfunctioned. Lubricants thickened in the cold. Many soldiers lacked proper winter uniforms because German planners had expected the campaign to end before winter arrived. Instead of a quick victory, Germany found itself trapped in a long war of attrition. The turning point came at a city on the Volga River, Stalingrad. What began as another offensive soon became one of the bloodiest battles in human history. Street by street, building by building, room by room, German and Soviet soldiers fought in brutal close combat. Months passed. Casualties mounted. Entire divisions disappeared. Then, in November 1942, the Soviet Union launched Operation Uranus. Rather than attacking the strongest German units directly, Soviet forces struck weaker Axis armies guarding the flanks. Within days, they surrounded Germany's 6th Army. More than 250,000 German troops became trapped. Hitler refused to authorize a breakout. He ordered them to hold their positions. The Luftwaffe attempted to supply the surrounded army by air. It failed. Too few aircraft, too little fuel, too many Soviet fighters. Starvation spread. Ammunition ran low. Disease followed. In February 1943, the once proud 6th Army surrendered. It was one of the greatest defeats in German military history. For the first time, the myth of German invincibility had been shattered. Only months later came another decisive battle, Kursk, the largest tank battle ever fought. Germany hoped one final massive offensive would restore the initiative. New Panther tanks, Tiger tanks, heavy assault guns, thousands of armored vehicles prepared for battle. But the Soviet Union had anticipated the attack. Layer after layer of defensive belts waited. Minefields stretched for miles. Anti-tank guns covered every approach. When Germany attacked, its armored spearheads met overwhelming resistance. Although German forces fought with remarkable determination, they could no longer replace losses as quickly as their opponents. The Soviet Union simply produced more tanks, more guns, more aircraft, more soldiers. After Kursk, Germany permanently lost the strategic initiative on the Eastern Front. From that point forward, the Red Army advanced steadily toward Berlin. Meanwhile, the Western Allies were growing stronger every month. The United States had entered the war with an industrial capacity unlike anything the world had ever seen. American factories operated day and night. Entire automobile plants switched to building tanks. Shipyards launched cargo vessels at astonishing speed. Aircraft factories produced thousands of bombers and fighters every month. The Soviet Union also expanded its wartime production east of the Ural Mountains. Safely beyond German bombers, Britain continued building ships, radar systems, and aircraft while maintaining critical Atlantic supply routes. Together, the Allies possessed an industrial advantage Germany could never match. Even though German engineers often produced technically advanced weapons, the Allies produced overwhelming numbers. The skies over Europe also changed dramatically. Early in the war, the Luftwaffe had dominated many battlefields. Now it faced relentless Allied bombing campaigns. American B-17 Flying Fortresses, B-24 Liberators, British Lancaster bombers. Night after night, day after day, German factories, rail yards, oil refineries, bridges, and transportation networks came under attack. Entire industrial regions suffered devastating damage. Aircraft production continued, but fuel production collapsed. Without fuel, even the finest tank could not move. Even the fastest tank could not move. Even the fastest fighter could not fly. Germany increasingly possessed weapons, but lacked the resources to use them effectively. At sea, the Battle of the Atlantic also turned against Germany. Improved radar, long-range patrol aircraft, escort carriers, better convoy tactics, and the breaking of German naval codes dramatically reduced the effectiveness of U-boat operations. Submarine losses increased. Experienced crews became difficult to replace. The campaign that once threatened Britain's survival gradually lost its strategic impact. Then came June 6, 1944. D-Day. More than 150,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy. It became the largest amphibious invasion in history. Germany still possessed formidable defensive forces, veteran soldiers, powerful artillery, fortified positions, but it no longer enjoyed complete air superiority. Allied aircraft dominated the skies. Roads and railways behind German lines were constantly attacked. Reinforcements arrived too slowly. Fuel shortages limited armored counterattacks. Germany fought fiercely, but it faced enemies attacking from east, west, south, and the air simultaneously. As Allied armies pushed toward Germany, The Soviet Union advanced relentlessly from the east. Cities fell one after another. Warsaw, Budapest, Vienna. The Red Army crossed the Oder River. Berlin itself became the final battlefield. The city that had symbolized Germany's rise now witnessed its collapse. In April 1945, Soviet forces surrounded Berlin. Street fighting erupted. Teenagers, old men, remaining soldiers, everyone who could hold a weapon was ordered to defend the capital. But the outcome had already been decided. On April 30th, Adolf Hitler died in his bunker. Days later, Berlin surrendered. On May 8th, 1945, Germany officially surrendered to the Allies. The war in Europe was over. So how powerful was Germany during World War II? The answer is both impressive and complex. Germany possessed one of the most effective professional armies ever assembled. Its officer corps transformed modern military doctrine. Its early campaigns demonstrated extraordinary operational skill. Its tanks, aircraft, submarines, artillery, and communications technology were among the finest of their era. German scientists introduced innovations that influenced military technology for decades after the war. Its soldiers repeatedly demonstrated tactical effectiveness against numerically superior opponents. At its peak, Germany dominated most of continental Europe. Yet power has limits. Germany lacked sufficient oil. It lacked access to many critical raw materials. Its economy was smaller than the combined economies of its enemies. Its industry, while highly capable, could not outproduce the United States and Soviet Union together. Strategic decisions, including opening multiple fronts and underestimating opponents, placed the demands on Germany that no military could sustain indefinitely. By fighting Britain, the Soviet Union, and later the United States at the same time, Germany faced a coalition with greater manpower, industrial capacity, and access to global resources. Superior battlefield tactics could win campaigns, but they could not overcome overwhelming economic and industrial realities forever. Today, military historians continue studying Germany's campaigns, not to glorify them, but to understand how organization, technology, leadership, logistics, and industrial power interact in modern warfare. World War II also stands as a reminder of the catastrophic human cost of aggressive war and the immense suffering inflicted across Europe and beyond, including the crimes committed by the Nazi regime. Understanding how Germany rose to such military strength and why it ultimately failed helps explain one of the most consequential conflicts in human history. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more in-depth stories about World War II, military strategy, and the battles that changed history, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and let us know in the comments which World War II topic should we cover next. Until next time, thank you for watching.